Welcome to On the Bauble Podcast, episode 23. I'm your host, Sabasa J. Ueda, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. This week, we're going to be talking about the very end of the PQ season and how this PQ season went. And we're also going to be talking about the most recent ban announcement that's going to come in effect as of today of our recording. So we haven't played any games in this ban list yet, but calling Indianapolis is going to happen this weekend. So we're going to have a little bit of predictions about that as well. But before we go into that, how was your week in Flesh and Blood, Yuki?
I haven't played any Flesh and Blood since last weekend's PQs. My report cards are due on Thursday, so I really wanted to fly or drive with people on some road trip and spend 4 hours getting to the next closest PQ, but had to be an adult and do some marking. So I don't know. That's been going okay. I'm looking forward to being done in a few days here, but no Flesh and Blood for me. How about you, Jay?
After last week, I got pretty tilted, losing in quarters in Kelowna. That's not a local PQ, but it's like, 5 hours away from where I live? A 5 hour drive away from where I live. And then I impulse bought a flight ticket to Edmonton, which is a hour and a half flight away from Vancouver. There was only 15 players in that event, and it was cut to top 4, and I came 6th place after Swiss.
Oof. Were you running back Fi?
Yeah, I think now that I think about it, I shouldn't have. I should have just played Oldham. I knew what the meta was going to be like in Edmonton. It was going to be aggro heavy. There's going to be some number of Bravos, some number of Dromai, and we knew there was going to be a Kano. I feel like in that field, I should have just played Oldham and then try and leverage longer games, longer turns, just more decision points, and try and realize my skill edge instead of jamming Fi and running at people essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think that one of the things that we kind of saw in this PQ season is that Icelander and Oldham in particular really performed well. And I think a lot of it is exactly what Jay was talking about being able to play these long kind of methodical games where you make so many decision points. And if you are a strong pilot on those decks, you can get there with a very high degree of consistency. Just really, really rewards. Basically, the longer the game is and the more decisions you make, the more you can exercise your edge.
The way I died at that PQ was I went 2-0, and then round 3 I lost the mirror. Mostly came down to the Dyro, I think, and they drew more Art of Wars than I did. And then round 4 I lost the Dyro again, and then they were playing Stoke the Flames Inflame, but each time they had Stoke the Flames or Inflame, they had Art of War with it, so it made those cards really good. And with exactly Inflame, they had double Art of War on that turn. And that turn was ridiculous. Inflame, not that good of a card. But when it's with 2 Art of Wars, Phoenix Flame goes to your hand for free. It's so broken.
That makes a ton of sense. It's kind of like Rise from the Ashes, I guess, where you can get the +3, but also get the Phoenix Flame to banish the Art of War. So just when you line it up, it's the highest ceiling you can have in Fi.
Yes. I just wish if you just didn't have Art of War with the Inflame, or if they just not together, anything but together, and I win that game.
Yeah, the Fi mirrors can be. I don't want to say that your decisions don't matter, because they definitely do. I think that they can be quite tight, and just making the most efficient play possible does give you some edge in the mirror if your opponent isn't doing the same. But definitely a matchup I've felt is really hard to break open and just kind of ends up being a little coin flippy.
Yeah. Unfortunate. That's also the reason why I'm should have brought Oldham. It would have been better, I think.
Makes a lot of sense. And for anybody wondering why we're talking about driving 4 hours or flying, we get 2 local PQs. One of our local PQs is an hour drive away. That one's pretty close. And after that, it's Seattle, which didn't work out this time because their PQ was at the same time as ours, and that's about a 3-hour drive if you include the border. And then after that,
it's a little bit longer than 3 hours.
Depends on traffic.
Yeah, that's true.
If it's Seattle proper, it's 3 hours, and then the Peaky that a bunch of people drove to is Mr. Bill's, which is in Kitsap. It's kind of like you have to like drive past Seattle and then back up the coast because there's some water separating it, and that's like 4 hours. And that's probably like equal distance roughly to Kelowna and Kamloops in the interior, but those ones require you to drive through mountains, and there was snow. There's often snow in the winter, so they have their own challenges. So anyways, that's why we're always talking about traveling during these seasons, is if you want to play more than two events, you kind of got to travel. So
Yeah, it's ridiculous where it's like when I calculated the costs, it was cheaper to fly to a PQ than it is to drive to one.
yeah, gas is expensive unless you can split it a bunch of ways. It's not cheap.
Well, let's just move on and talk about PQ season takeaways. How did you think about the metagame this year or this season?
Overall, I enjoyed it. I liked that the best decks were these kind of mid range decks, and I felt like the games were pretty interesting. I thought that the diversity that you saw in terms of what was showing up was really, really cool. And I feel like you started to see, it's hard to say. I'm curious to see the week three data, but like as much as Dash and Icelander and Fi were clearly standouts, especially the two Ice heroes. Sorry, not Dash. Oldham, Icelander, and Fi. The two ice heroes in particular, it did seem like Dash was starting to put up a bit more results, and Dromai was starting to pick up a bit more results with these like red line decks. So I'm kind of curious if it would have evolved, or but I don't know. The ice decks might have been slightly too good, but overall, I thought it was one of the more balanced metagames we've had.
It was a little bit skewed though, I think in my or how I saw it. It looked like all of the good players were playing Icelander and Oldham, where they get to like exercise exactly what we were saying earlier, like the edge of playing longer games and having more decisions. A lot of the more casual players seem to be playing basically everything or anything else, and the people who didn't feel comfortable beating like good Icelanders or good Oldhams ended up on Fi. That was like tryhards. Like basically myself, I was just like putting myself on Fi because I didn't really want to, put the effort in each game to play Icelander or Oldham, which ended up costing me an invite this season. But
Yeah, so perhaps the data is skewed, but I think kind of undeniably by the numbers, not so much in terms of representation, but in terms of who was winning the events. Icelander and Oldham definitely stood out. A bit of that could be because of stronger players tending to gravitate towards it, but I think it also kind of indicates that they were probably the best decks by a decent margin.
yeah, it was very hard to beat a good Icelander player. It was near impossible to beat a really good Oldham player. It's just like if some of those games felt unwinnable.
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, what did you think of this metagame? Like compared to like we've had like the chain Starvo metagame, we had just like the chain metagame in Monarch, and we also had what was like the other major one? We had like kind of like the Lightning Briar metagame around national season when Tails just came out. Compared to like some of those metagames, what did you think of this one overall? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it more or less? Or
For myself personally, I'm probably an outlier in like TCG communities. I like the one deck formats more than these diverse. Like you're gonna play against 7 different decks when you go to a Pro Quest type of formats. I like bringing best deck in format, like in chain Monarch chain meta. I like bringing chain and having to play 5 chain mirrors, or like going to a Starvo meta and play 4 or 5 Starvo mirrors. It's like more of what I like about TCGs, and which is why I ended up basically on Fi, where I didn't really want to think about so many of the matchups with Icelander or Oldham, and then yeah, I'm like kicking myself now, but like which is like, that's the reason I like being linear if there's so many decks, but yeah. What about you, Yuki? Did you like this format?
I think overall, yeah, I liked maybe more than anything. I liked the trend towards like mid-range Flesh and Blood, which is sort of. I think you started right around Monarch, so we didn't have very much mid-range Flesh and Blood because Chain was just coming onto the scene. But like right before that, Flesh and Blood was super mid-rangey with like Ira. In Blitz events, Blitz was very popular back then, and believe it or not, Blitz wasn't just a like turn 2 or 3 format back in the day, for the most part. And I kind of liked returning to that kind of like mid-rangey Flesh and Blood, and I hope that we don't lose that, but I do think that, overall it was good that they made a few changes. The ice decks were probably a little bit out of line.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Yuki? I played a lot of mid-rangey decks in Blitz. I was playing like Fatigue Oldham in Blitz.
That's true. There was Fatigue Oldham. So yeah, maybe Blitz has been the home of more mid-rangey decks to some degree. I don't know. There's like Reinar and Kano and stuff. I'm reluctant to say that.
Yeah, you can just get blown out on turn 2 for no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
I think everyone has their own tastes and likes about formats. Did you think these we're gonna go into the bans soon, but did you think these bans were needed this or what's a better way of saying it? Do you think bans were necessary right now?
I think that because of how diverse the meta was and there not being any major events, they maybe could have waited until after the callings to see what happens. But we did have some pretty big battle hardens, which might have been a pretty good indicator. And I kind of accept the reasoning that they kind of mentioned that Oldham, Fi, and Icelander were on top last season and they continue to be on top this season. And what wasn't said in the article, but what I kind of ended up feeling was that they might be worried that Outsiders is just going to be the same thing and that Outsiders isn't really going to be able to impact the metagame, which, like, thinking about the heroes, like, obviously a new set can change a lot, but ninjas that aren't Fi, Assassin, and Ranger are kind of all classes that are struggling right now. Lexi's been having some success, to be fair, but like they haven't been running the metagame. And so it wouldn't surprise me if these heroes were just kind of a little too strong and they were worried that the game might just kind of stagnate around them. So I think if that's the case, especially, it makes a lot of sense.
Then do you think it's better to have the changes in effect maybe after calling Indy?
I don't know. I'm not privy to all the data. It's hard to say. I wouldn't have hated to see things like I think I'm okay with changes. I think I might have liked to see slightly gentler changes than what we saw. I was expecting like a small ban announcement, but it ended up being really big. So
As we were talking about the bans, let's just go into the actual bannings. I don't think we have talked about that yet. So in Classic Constructed, effective January 30th, so which is today that we're talking about this podcast, the first card banned is Belittle. That's mainly in 5. I don't think we need to explain what these cards do we?
not really. Like Belittle's just a card we've been seeing on top decks like Chain, like Briar at Leal, and in Fi. It's just been a mainstay of these aggro decks, and I think people are pretty familiar with what Belittle does.
Okay. I'm just gonna read through the rest of the list. So Oldham lost Winter's Wail. It's the Guardian weapon. Whenever it hits, makes the Frostbite. Honestly, this card was broken to all hell since this card got released. Third card banned is not banned. Suspended until Icelander becomes Living Legend is Amulet of Ice. Unfortunately, this card saw more play than in Icelander, so some more heroes got hit by that. And last card is Hypothermia, is also suspended until Icelander becomes Living Legend.
Yeah. And in the ban announcement, they kind of mention, it sounds like they kind of say that the ice heroes in particular are too good. Oldham stats have been really high. Icelander, they said, especially in the hands of very strong players, is really, really powerful, which I agree with. The strongest players on Icelander, it really does start to look like the best deck. So I think hitting those heroes is not surprising to me. The Hypothermia ban I fully expected. I think it just, when it's good, it hoses heroes so hard. Like when it's good, it just stops their turn and doesn't cost any resources, which is ridiculous. Like especially in Icelander, when you get to play it without even spending your action point. At least Oldham is like a 1-card pivot where you get to block out, play your Hypothermia, but you don't do anything else. But in Icelander, when it doesn't even take your action point and you can kind of like get them when they overcommit, it's a little bit gross.
Doesn't it also make a Frostbite?
It does also make a Frostbite, but usually when you're playing it, they've like already attacked the thing with Go again, so I don't know how much the Frostbite really matters.
Oh, Frost Text does 1 damage.
Yeah, but usually the matchups that Hypothermia is good, you're not playing Frostex, so.
Fair enough. Also, like about Hypothermia, it just feels so bad when your opponent has Hypothermia.
Yeah.
Like not even like that it's good in the game or like it's stops your opponent's whole turn or whatever. But like when you're playing like an aggro deck or just honestly any deck, and then your opposing Icelander plays hypothermia on like any of your turns, you just feel like you don't even feel like you got. You're just like, oh, my turn ended.
Yeah, there's often not really much that you can do to play around it in a lot of cases, and I think that's probably the biggest problem with this card. So it's a card I expect it to go. I think suspending it until Icelander is gone is fine since it was kind of most egregious there, and it hits Icelander mostly, although it does hit Oldhim too. Oldhim was relying on that card quite a bit as just like an ice blue for their Winter's Wail, which is now gone. And then sometimes you just like shut down a dash in the late game who's built up their pistols, or like a Briar who has Channel Mount Heroic on. You can just be like, oh, my ice blue just bails me out of your 20 damage turn. Sweet. So
It's so gross.
So yeah, I think hypothermia is a great change, one that I expected. The one that I maybe didn't expect so much was Amulet of Ice. This is also targeted at Icelander. They kind of mentioned the low setup cost of it costing 0, being able to establish it, and being able to really sculpt to the end games. I see their points. I think being a 0 block is a pretty real cost. And it kind of felt like to me like this is like so much of Icelander's identity is like setting up these turns where in the mid game I take your whole hand or like most of your hand, and then I manage to like swing the game around from there. And losing this tool I think really hurts in pretty much every matchup. And it also does some collateral damage to Lexi, who was starting to kind of see some moderate success. Like a lot of people were picking her up. She was doing okay despite the bad Oldhim matchup. But I think Amulet just really, really hurts her, especially into Guardians. Like you need that card to be able to punch through, and you just don't have it anymore.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, how do you even beat Oldhim without Amulet Vice now?
I don't have a good answer. Even though they lose Winter's Wail, I think the hit to Amulet might be a bigger deal. And yeah, Amulet was this like really important card where it scaled a lot with the pilot's like knowledge of how to use it in the matchup, and it can often let you do things like maybe Briars set up their Channel Mount Heroic and you have a fuse and you don't have quite enough disruption, but Amulet of Ice kind of gives you a little bit of, as long as you had an ice fuse, you can Amulet to kind of take a little bit more off of that Briar turn when you really, really need it. And just having that flexibility, like Insidious Chill is not a May, it always happens and it's really expensive to develop. And Amulet just being an instant gave a lot of play to the card. You got to kind of just wait to see what happens, activate it. So I think a really key card, and yeah, pretty much hurts across the board. I think it's played in basically every matchup.
Can I say something about the Amulet Vice from a non Icelander player? Amulet Vice was the most annoying card. It's like it's just there, and you have to respect it the whole game. I was mainly playing Fi, and the turns you don't have Belittle, oh my god! Like they have an Amulet of Ice on board, and they have an Arsenal. You just hate your life. If you ever draw 4 red hand, you feel like you lose against Icelander just with Amulet Life on the board. It's that card is not healthy.
Well,
Like it doesn't even matter if you have the fuse or not. I know you don't have a fuse when you don't have it, but the other side doesn't. So sometimes you just like have to like keep up 2 blue or like 2 resources up, and like you have to like sculpt these like really annoying attack patterns that aren't fully efficient. So like just having the Amulet of Ice up can just like you get something out of Amulet Ice even if you don't pop it. Like it's that gross of a card.
it's interesting. Yeah, I guess I never felt like Amulet was a card that you're necessarily playing around, because like I agree that you want to keep 2 up, but I think that that's like just sort of natural because you want to have insulation from Blizzard. You also want to swing Emberblade at the end anyways to play around hypothermia when it was in the format. So I felt like there was like a lot of reasons to kind of sequence in a way where you leave resources up, and Amulet is often
But
used more
the
on your turn than on the opponent's turn, but certainly having the flexibility to do it is nice.
yes, it's just a gross thing of like where if they have an amulet up and then you have to see or you're trying to sequence a turn where Ember Blade is in the middle of your turn, so then you can salt the wounds for bigger or lava burst for 5 properly or 6. you end up in a spot where, okay, I use my 2 resources and swing with Ember Blade to try and set up a lava burst, but then because they have an amulet up and you still have an arsenal, you get to this spot where like, oh, if they just have any random ice fuse, your whole turn ends and they save 6 life. So instead of doing that, what you have to do is like keep up 2 resources up and then try and get a lava burst, like force a lava burst in beforehand, and then your turn ends with 2 resources up. So it's a little bit awkward in like a lot of spots, mostly when they have multiple amulets of ice up. And really, the only way if I ever beats Icelander is to just hit them hard in the first 3 turns of the game before they set anything up.
That's fair. So, anyways, Amulet, definitely a very good card, and I think that these two bans are really significant to Icelander. I haven't tested her much. My gut kind of says that she's going to be like in that tier 2 kind of category where you can bring her. She has some okay matchups, but she has some problem matchups. I think the hypothermia hit is going to hurt quite a bit against Rune Blades, which was previously a really good matchup. I think you might still be okay there, but I think that Briar is going to have like a lot more opportunity to blow you up without hypothermia and without amulet. Dromai is likely a little bit harder without hypothermia, and that matchup was already a little bit tricky. Although the red line Dromai might be a little bit easier, so maybe it balances out. I think that dash is going to be a huge problem for Icelander. The matchup was already a little bit rough. I think it was slightly dash favored, and I think without hypothermia, I just don't know if you can beat dash. Like it might be. I'm sure that you can win sometimes if you like chain channels and Aether Ice Veins and everything lines up, but I think that that's going to be the exception, and you need to get pretty lucky to win that matchup. It seems kind of miserable, honestly.
Yeah, and the more you talk about Icelander, the more I'm pretty happy about these changes. These cards are like 1 card outs to like these decks. I don't think 1 card out should exist in this game.
I don't know if it's necessarily a one card out so much as like the matchup was close and it felt like you kind of won or lost based on drawing your disruption, and losing 2 major pieces of disruption against aggro decks just makes that like fine line so much less consistent.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Because Icelander is the kind of deck that like if they attack you for 20, you're probably never winning the game because you can't like your hands are just not that efficient. You need to keep the hands all like pretty small, otherwise
You don't think like Cornet Peak is gonna be like more of like the main way you disrupt your opponent now?
maybe we'll have to see. I do think that peak is like kind of problematic because it takes your action point and you're not really progressing your game. Um, like you're not presenting any damage, so often like just trying to block out and peak and then play your arsenal is like a little bit too inefficient.
Let's talk about Oldham very quickly. Oldham losing Winter Whale. This is a big change, but I'm actually pretty happy with this change. Winter's Whale was like quite a bit too powerful in my opinion. Every time I played Oldham, Winter's Whale would be like just swinging that hammer felt, even if it wasn't icy, it felt good, which means that when it was icy, it must feel awful for the opponent, mostly in the aggro matchups. So I think this deck losing Winter's Whale is a good thing, so that Oldham actually has more intricate decisions to make. But all I ask for still is I want Pulse of Eisenloft back if we're gonna lose Winter's Whale. Like it's not that big of a card, is it?
I guess we'll have to see where Oldham falls. But yeah, I agree. Winter's Whale was just significantly above rate. I think you could make a pretty good argument for it being the best weapon in the game.
It's that or Rosetta Thorn.
It's definitely between the two of them. Rosetta Thorn, pretty annoying to block out. Winter's Whale is just always on, though. The fact that you just have its max potential with a 1 card hand is pretty insane. And the thing that got me about Winter's Whale as I was thinking about it, I was like, what about all those times like I've had to block or someone else or like you've seen people block with armor to stop the weapon, and it's like just because of the frostbite, and it's just so like sometimes just blocking the frostbite with your equipment, you'll like give up your tunic because that frostbite is worth an entire card. So
That's so gross.
yeah,
Well, we have Titan's Fist, which is a significant downgrade. That card swings for 3 sometimes.
it does. My initial reaction to this ban was that I thought it was massive, and I do think it's pretty big, although it's sort of interesting. I think that there's kind of like a few ways that Oldhim can go from this. I think you can actually probably still play the proactive Oldhim list that we've been seeing that honestly don't swing hammer that much in a lot of cases. Like they're just kind of trying to be as efficient as possible. And I think you can probably still do that against a lot of decks. You might have trouble against like Channel Mount Briar, but I think you're probably pretty good into like I imagine Fi still stays close, for example.
Oh, I think Fi matchup is great now because they don't have Belittle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think between the two of them, like you're pretty good. And one thing that's kind of interesting about Titan's Fist that I was thinking about is maybe into like where would you run this? Like Dromai or Icelander, perhaps? You could potentially start building towards like Anathos, since they has like the same condition as Titan's Fist. So you might be able to, if you're wanting to go more aggressive, you might be able to do like the Zealous Belting or what's the other one? Browse the Ancients into Anathos, kind of like Bravo does. Um, so you might have that as like a potential sideboard option. You do have to give up Stalagmites. I don't think it's for every matchup, but
Yeah, I think it's if you're gonna do that, the other hammer is a little bit better. Oh, what is that one called? Sledge of Anvilville? No.
Sledge of Ampelheim, yeah, there's an argument between the two of them. Anathos is definitely a little bit more efficient because you have the option to also swing it for like it's always 3 resources, and so I think that that kind of helps in some ways. Like the rouse the ancients you can do off two pitch, whereas with sledge you need a tunic counter because it costs 7.
Yes, the major difference between the Anathos in Bravo and Anathos in Oldhim is that a 2 blue hand with no other abilities, you can't actually swing Anathos in Oldhim for 6, but in Bravo you can always just activate the hero ability and then swing Anathos for 6. And losing that option is pretty big, where
Yeah,
you really don't have that option to pitch for no reason in Oldhim. They're just the cards don't exist. Like if we had like a armor piece that lets you like pay
so
one
like
resource,
tectonic plating.
tectonic plating. Wow, you're no, just at this point, please just play Tunic and a Sledge. I think that's just gonna be
Yeah,
better.
I think sledge is definitely going to be the way to go in some matchups like the mirror,
Hmm.
but it's interesting. I think that depending on what decks you're wanting to play against, I could potentially see room for Anathos in the future since it does just so line up so cleanly with Titan's Fist. Like I want to say like Dash where you need to pressure a lot, except not Dash because you need the shield against the pistol. But like if it was a matchup like that where it wasn't exactly Dash, it would be like a card you could run.
Like all I'm hearing right now is you're trying to like sell me on Anathos, but then you can't think of a matchup you want to play Anathos in.
You played into Reinar.
What?
I don't know.
No, no, because you want to be able to pitch and then have a Ram's Head, so then you can use Crown of Seas, cap floating mana, and use your floating mana against Rhinar.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think it has potential. I think it's a reasonable. I think it's a reasonable sideboard slot, but it would require the deck to be changed. But anyways, regardless of which weapon Oldhim plays, I do think you can still play him pretty proactively. I don't think he's quite as potent. I think more decks have a fighting chance with him, which is probably a good thing. But I think that deck can exist, and I also like the Dennis Sang style life gain Oldhim that we were talking about.
Never swing hammers.
I still don't know how good that deck is, but it doesn't really revolve around swinging hammers. So if that is a really good deck, then it definitely is something that can continue to be good. You still have to deal with time and everything else, but the deck should be pretty much just as strong.
Yeah, like I'm still missing an Imperial Warhorn in my collection, so I can't play the deck yet. But once I get a Warhorn, I'm gonna be an Oldhim main for the rest of the season.
I'll say that losing hypothermia might be a big hit against decks like Briar, and also I feel like Dash might kind of, I guess where we're going next is like how other decks fare, but I think Dash might be more represented, which I don't know. Dash has pretty clean answer to the Warhorn, where if you just get Teklo Pounders to insulate yourself from the Warhorn, you're pretty safe.
And do you want to just move on to who the winners of this ban announcements are?
Yeah, I think it's basically all the decks that were kind of right beneath Icelander, and Oldhim. So I think especially your aggressive decks that were maybe kept down by Ice a little bit. I think Briar might be the biggest winner just because the Icelander matchup in particular was so bad for you. And Briar, not that long ago in Lille, was like the premier aggro deck pretty much since it came out. So I think Briar's going to come back with a vengeance. And similarly, I wouldn't be surprised to see a little more Dash. Just having like less to contend with in terms of like Icelander and Oldhim and Fi all being really different decks, I think Dash might have a little bit better ability to kind of customize. I'm curious if like Hanabi Blaster kind of Dash could maybe have some legs in this format, but I'm not sure.
Oh, Hanabi Blaster Dash is powerful. It's fast. It just hits so hard.
Yeah, the big problem with that deck is that it really struggled into Oldhim, and so it's a little bit contingent on like where does Oldhim fall in this meta, and I think it's so much of this meta game is going to depend on where Oldhim is. Overall, I think Oldhim's still going to be a part of the meta, but I'm curious how people will build him. Like, I think you could build him similarly. I think you could like move away from Ice entirely if you really wanted to. You could go to
No, no,
Fatigue.
no, no. You cannot move away from Ice and Oldhim. The
Not
ice.
like entirely, but I think you could reduce the amount of ice that you have.
I think that's a mistake though, because Oldham's strongest power, like hero power, was like Ice React. Get rid of a card in your hand, save 6 life. Like that's just that happened too often. I think it's gonna stay the same. Where
Yeah,
if Oldham moves away from the Ice React, I think you're gonna be doing almost better with Bravo being proactive that way.
I guess I don't mean totally move away. I mean like I was thinking like maybe you run channel like Frigid, Blizzard, Winter's Grasp, and like I don't know a few Winter's Bite or something.
Yeah, that's what it currently plays.
Well, no, it also plays like Hypothermia and stuff, and some lists were going pretty heavy ice actually.
Yeah, it loses, 3 cards, maybe 6, but
Yeah, but I guess what I mean is like I think rather than running like 15 ice cards, you could maybe go down to like 10 or 11 and play more of the 3 blocks.
channel Winter's Bite, Grasp, and Blizzard is 12 cards already. So
Yeah, but you might not even play all the Winter's Bites. I don't know. The
no,
card's fine.
no, Yuki, you have to play Winter's Bite. That card is broken too.
It's good. It's good. I think it gets a lot less good
Winter's Whale.
without Winter's Well, but it's
Yeah,
still good.
that's true.
It's just the block too, right? So
Yeah. You Ice React with it. It blocks for 4. It's great.
yeah, maybe it depends on what the metagame's like, but yeah, that makes sense to me.
What about the other decks like Dory?
Yeah, I think Dory could be in a really good spot. If Oldhim trends really defensive with a lot of defense reactions, you might have trouble punching through. But if Oldhim remains more proactive, I think that that's not horrible for Dory. And Dory's pretty good at racing most of the aggro matchups. You kind of just stack up counters, and in the end game, you end up having a Dawnblade that has like 6 counters on it, and you can just kind of block and attack them for 9. And it's a big problem.
Yeah, the aggro decks just need to not let that happen.
Yeah. But I do think that her matchup into a lot of the aggro decks is actually pretty solid. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Dory maybe do well, although Dromai seems hard. I guess Dash kind of has the same problem. Dromai seems hard. So
Then what about Dromai?
yeah, we've been seeing people really explore how to build this. We've been seeing like dragon decks with Mage Master Boots and Tomofindel and some higher blue counts do well. But we've also been seeing these like very, very red line Dromai decks. Before it was like the red hot Dromai, but they've since cut the red hots and they're running like somewhere in the realm of like 6 blues kind of thing.
Yeah, Ravenous Rabble into like a Phantasmal 7.
Yeah, and you have like Scar for a Scar, and I've even seen some interesting tech with like Flame Call Awakening, where you have like one Phoenix Flame and Flame Calls, and then you can, pitch a red to get your Flame Call, and then it's like a pseudo blue because you can pitch the Flame Call to Furnace, and you get two. So you kind of turn your red into a blue, and then you also get two Ash out of the deal, which is like pretty good. You do need the right hand to make it work. Like you probably need a zero into that into like at least a 1 or 2 cost, but it's interesting. But yeah, I think Fi is still going to be solid. I don't know if he's going to be better than Briar though, and depending on how well represented Fi is, I think it will determine how well that Dromai does. Because, well, I wouldn't say that Dromai like smashes other aggro decks necessarily. She has okay game into Briar and really good game into Dash. Actually, it's mostly just Fi that's really given her trouble. So
It's
if
not even
Fi,
just Fi. It's just mask of momentum.
yeah, but I think if Fi is less represented, we could maybe see Dromai be an option. Maybe the matchup's so bad though. It really depends how much Fi there is.
Yeah, it's just like if they just ban mask of momentum, Droma is a great deck. It's like it doesn't have that much bad matchups. Like it gets to like do really above rate things. Like with all the dragons, like all the dragons are so above rate. It's ridiculous.
I do think that banning Mask of Momentum seems like a little bit of a shame, but
Yeah, well, Crown of Seas didn't get banned. Mask of Momentum's not getting banned.
Lexi. We kind of talked about Lexi losing Amulet of Ice and that being a big deal. I've heard some people say that like the meta shift, if it does shift aggro, which I kind of think it will, at least initially, could be good for Lexi, and that's kind of true. But the Guardian matchup. So I've been wanting to play Lexi, and the big reason I haven't been is because the Guardian matchup is so hard, and I think it's still going to be just as hard. All the disruption that Oldham or Bravo want to play are alive against you. You don't really have armor to deal with it. Command and Conquer Pummel is a huge beating. Like, it's just the matchup. If they're being proactive is really hard, and honestly, maybe even if they're blocking out now, I'm not sure. Before, I felt pretty comfortable against Fatigue with Amulets of Ice to kind of force through a big turn. That might be a lot tougher now without Amulet, though.
Yeah, Lexi clear loser in this banning. Like it just she got ripped a key card in some matchup just because Icelander was too good.
Yeah, and Lexi kind of had like this, in my opinion, this lack of good blues. I know some people have been liking Polar Blast and Cold Snap, but I think that you really want to be arsenaling an arrow so that you can go 3 attacks wide. And so, and just like the one cost on those cards is so medium. Like, even though you draw a card, sometimes you're like, sweet, I drew another red arrow and I have to like pitch this red arrow to make my curve work. So, like, yeah, it like replaced itself, but like, I'm not getting like a card's worth of value out of it. Like, it's really hard to make the curve work unless you're like all 0 cost arrows. But it's like, why are you ice if you're all 0 cost arrows? So it just doesn't quite work out. Like, often you're wanting to do a few zero into a 0 cost, which costs 3 resources because you activate Voltaire twice. You have a 1 cost and then you have a 0 cost arrow. I think those cards are kind of lackluster, and the good 0 cost non-attack actions with Go Again were really premium in Lexi because you can just fuse them, and if they're left over, it's just here's a Frostbite, no commitment to play it out. It's never going to mess up your curve, and Winter's Bite and Amulet both disrupt the hand either immediately or down the road, and they were just so good. I think they were honestly probably the two best ice blues. I think better than Channel Lake Frigid. I think Channel sometimes it's too good not to play, but it doesn't always get its value. In Lexi, it's kind of like you play it when you're flooded on blues. All right. Do you want to talk about calling Indianapolis predictions? First off, if you were going to calling Indianapolis, what deck do you think you would play?
Myself?
Yeah.
Oh, I am. I'm gonna be on Dash for sure.
Yeah, I think Dash is a real solid pick.
I think. Well, also I have like 10 high octanes and like 9 Teklo cores. I have like 7 harpoons at this point.
Oh yeah, Dash with 7 harpoons sounds unbeatable. You should just do that.
But like, yeah, I'm just like fully invested in this deck. I think I thought this deck was gonna be good like even before this format. I was wrong. The ice hypothermia, I guess, was too powerful against the deck. Where if they just have it, your turn ends and you can't do anything about it. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But with Dash, just like I think Harpoon is just a ridiculous card. I've been playing Fi a lot, you know that, and honestly, playing against another Dash player, I would see lines from the other side where I'm like, oh, I could lose, and sometimes they don't take those lines, and I feel like I should have lost way more Dash games with Fi than I should have been, and that already makes me think that Dash is like a great deck. Where I don't know how to explain it. It's like if Dash was either a little bit more defensive or a little bit more aggressive on the right turns against Fi, it can crush that matchup. Like it absolutely crushes that matchup. Mostly when you have Harpoon and just you get to rip a card from the hand. If you go dash 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 dash, sorry, not dash, boost 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 with Harpoon with four boosts, you get to look at their whole hand and rip a card. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, even boosting 3 times can be pretty scary.
Yeah, I think what's really important with Dash though, with Harpoon, is like you need to know your opponent's deck inside out. If you don't know exactly the reasons why your opponent's showing the exact 3 cards they're showing you, like you won't be able to pick the right card from the hand. And if you don't pick the right card from the hand, Harpoon sucks.
Yeah, there's a bit of a guessing game on like what do you think they're hiding from you that they don't want you to take. I think there's like potential for mind games there, and you kind of need to like read your opponent, understand their deck, and also understand like sometimes there's just a one that you can pick where regardless of like let's say they have like the blue or the red starter in Fi, like regardless of which one they have, if there's often like a card where if you pick that one, it's just the best option by far.
Yeah. And sometimes, like when you get boosted 3 times with the Harpoon and you show 3 cards, like there's a card you're gonna be blocking with anyways, and if they choose that card, oh my god, like you definitely made a mistake with Harpoon.
Yeah, I think Dash is a great choice, and I think with I don't want to say Oldham like falling out of the meta, but I think Oldham being a little bit less dominant, I think does help Dash. Where like if you want that full boost plan, it was kind of hard to also be good into Oldham, and I think now you might be able to do both a little bit more.
No, no. Maybe the secret is to not even play the boost dash. It's the Nitroid Mechanoid dash.
Nah, I'm over it. I think the Nitro Mechanoid Dash is kind of bad into aggro. They go too fast, so
Oh yeah, it's quite awful into aggro.
I don't know about that deck. It's sweet, but it's like good into Dory. Real good into Dory. You get 5 you get a block with all your armor, and then you get another 5 battle warren or no temper, 5 temper equipment. It's nuts.
That's so true. Is what would you play at Indy if you were to go?
I was actually really close to booking a ticket to Indy, but then I saw the BNR and I was like, I'm pretty busy this weekend anyways. It would have been a terrible decision. I guess like I could go next weekend, like I'll be done all my report cards, but it's just I'll be exhausted. So I'm glad that I didn't, but I'm extra glad that I didn't with the ban announcement coming in, because honestly I have no idea. I think I might try and take Briar and pick it up and learn it. I don't think Briar is like too tough, and I have played it on and off a little bit here, so that might be my pick.
Wait,
Although
wait, wait, wait. Are you telling me you're gonna play
I
the aggro
hate
deck?
aggro mirrors.
No,
Begrudgingly,
no,
begrudgingly.
no, 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 no. You're not gonna play Briar. I cannot see you registering Briar for calling. No way.
Okay, if I want to win, I'll play Briar.
No, 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 no. You're not gonna do it. Even if you wanted to win.
If I want to get really upset with myself, I'll bring Lexi
I
and
don't
then play
know.
against Guardians and draw all ice cards against aggro decks.
Do you know what's gonna happen? Is like if you bring Briar, you're gonna lose to the mirror, and then you're gonna be like, why did I ever bring Briar to this calling? I should have just brought Lexi. And then if you bring
Yeah, that's
Lexi, you're
probably
gonna be
true.
like, why did I bring Lexi? I should have just played the best deck in the format, Briar.
Yeah, that does sound like me. To be honest, I don't really know. There's like not a deck that I'm super leaning towards. Like I'm sort of interested in learning Dromai. I could see myself like maybe playing Dory, but I don't have I have basically 0 reps on either of those, so there's no way that they would actually be on the table for me. So I think I would probably just take what I think is like one of the. You know what? I could take Dash too yeah, I've been playing quite a bit of Dash, so I could take Dash.
Yeah, Dash fun. Boost Dash is fun.
You know what? You're right. I want to believe that I would take Dash, but I might just like int and switch to Lexi because it's fun.
It's only a calling. It's like how much can your elo go down at a calling?
Oh, probably quite a bit, but yeah, I don't know. To be honest, so maybe our final section here. What do you expect to see do well at calling Indianapolis?
You know, let's just pick one hero. Let's pick one hero.
Okay,
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I think Briar.
You think it's gonna be Briar?
I think there's just nothing holding her back. Like she was so good until Icelander came in to police her, and I think she's just going to be good again. I don't know.
You know what I think is gonna win the calling? I think it's gonna be Oldham.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if Oldham wins. But I
I
think
think.
that Briar might be like the most represented at the top tables.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think so too. I think that might be the case. And then there's gonna be the two Oldham players in the whole field that's gonna have this format figured out already for some reason, and they're gonna crush everyone.
I could see it. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Lexi doing well for a while, just like feasting on Briars, and then probably lose somewhere towards the end or top eight. I feel so negative. I don't want to be so negative about Ranger, but it's just really hard to win these big events right now when you have like the ref, like Dory's a hard matchup, especially without Amulet to reset the Dawnblade. You just like can't tax them hard enough, and they have block very well, and they have on hits. It's pretty scary. Oldham's a scary matchup. Your deck can just brick. I don't know. I hope that I'm really looking forward to Outsiders. I'm gonna play a whole bunch of Ranger and brew a whole bunch of decks, and I hope that something's good enough. But definitely a bit frustrated with Ranger right now. It just feels like it doesn't have the tools to address some of these like kind of fundamental problems. Like Command and Conquer is just so incredibly good into you, and Guardian's just so demoralizing to play against.
Okay, I think this is a good spot to wrap it up.
All right, so I think that's going to wrap up our discussion. As always, thanks for listening, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What do you think about the recent bans? Are you a fan? Is there anything that we overlooked or didn't talk about in the bans? Are there cards that weren't banned that you think should have been? And what do you expect to do well at calling Indianapolis? What is your pick for a deck that's going to be on the top tables, or what are you bringing if you're going? Other than that, if you have any comments, questions, feedback, you're always welcome to get in touch with us at onthebauble@gmail.com. You can email us there, or you can also reach out to us on Twitter. You can find me at Yukili Bender, or you can find Jay at Ueda J on Twitter, and reach out to us and get in touch. But until next time, what do I say?
What? Until next time?
Until next time.
I don't think you typically end that way.
I don't think so either. Until next time, thanks for listening, and good luck if you're playing in any upcoming callings.
So for sign off, I don't really have a story, but what I am doing exactly right now is looking at flights to Indy and see if this is feasible right now. $700 to go there?
So I think you could have flown to Indy for like around 400 had you booked a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Although, so the problem with flying to Indy, and the reason that I didn't do it, is that my semester starts on Monday, and the last flight back on Sunday is 5 p.m., which means I need to be at the airport by 3 p.m. because it's international. And that means that if I top 8, I can't actually play top 8. So it just requires me to take it effectively requires to take both Friday as well as Monday off. and it just ends up being really hard to go to these callings on the East Coast because there's just like there's not enough flexibility with flight times to make it all work. And I guess technically I could leave like Friday night and arrive at 7 a.m. and have like probably not very much sleep. So that's like another thing I could do, but not really, not the easiest to travel to these events in the East Coast or even the Midwest for us, I would say.
Yeah, no, no, it's $800 round trip. $800.
800, yeah. Yeah, I think if you book earlier, you can get it for cheaper, but it's still
Let's see.
big time commitment no matter what.
Yeah, if you book not really though. Even if you book like a month in advance, it's only like 600. I don't see any 400s anytime soon.
Or maybe it was 500. I was definitely seeing flights for like four something. It might have been like 490 or something. I can't remember.
Or maybe just flight prices are going up. Or were you looking at American dollars?
Nope, Canadian.
Canadian? Because like even if I try to book a flight to Indy right now, in May it's like 700.
Oh, I think it depends on like what time of year you're going as well. Like certain times of year are cheaper to fly there than others.
Oh, I see, I see. Man, that sucks. It's $800 a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next calling after
Please,
this?
West Coast calling. The next one is Auckland. That one should be pretty affordable, right?
Let's see. Like if it's like $800, like
There's no way it's $800.
let's see. Auckland.
I think it's on the 24th.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the directions right now. Auckland. Ooh, it's about $2,000. But when
Yeah,
is
that's
this?
kind of
This
what
is
I thought.
the February 24th. February 24th. Oh, you can actually. It's like 1900. It's like 1900.
Oh,
$1,955.
well, so you're going then.
Ooh, probably not. If I'm not going for an $800 flight, 1900 is a little bit too much. But it is Canadian dollars, so it's like significantly less than the American dollars.
It is true.
1900 CAD to USD is for only 1400. You'd save like 500 US.
So reasonable. Yeah, I hope that we get some more Vegas or we said this before, but more callings either on the West Coast or on Vegas that are just actually feasible to travel to. When you go from West Coast to East Coast, it's like you leave at 7 a.m. and then you have a layover because you can't get a direct flight. And then by the time you get there, it's 7 p.m. and it's just like, okay,
Yeah, you
whole
lose.
day's gone. Great.
Yeah, you lose your whole day at the airport. It's not too bad
Yeah.
for me because like I end up just like doing things, watching anime anyways. It's like honestly more relaxing at the airport than it is at like being home and like doing other things like grinding poker or going out essentially.
That's fair enough. Yeah. I just find it kind of boring, honestly.
Oh, but so much anime to watch.
That's true. I guess if
It's
you have
like
some good shows to watch, it's pretty
it's like
nice.
one of the times I was in the airport, I spent like 13 hours in the airport watching anime. Yeah, I was pretty mad when my flight was coming up because like I was like at the very end of a season. Oh man, no internet on the flights. I don't want to pay for that.
Should have downloaded it beforehand. I mean, wait, no, you don't download. That's illegal. Can you download with Crunchyroll though? I thought you can.
Ooh, I don't have a Crunchyroll subscription. You
Yeah,
need
I'm
you
pretty
need
sure. I don't know if
if
Crunchyroll has it. I
if
know that some
no
of
no if
these,
you
like,
if you have a Crunchyroll subscription, you can download the episodes.
right. I was pretty sure that you can. It's been a long time since I've had a Crunchyroll subscription, but
Yeah, but you think I'm gonna pay for a Crunchyroll subscription?
it's true. It's Jay that we're talking about here.
Okay, I think that's about it. I guess I'm not going to either of the callings.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we'll get another round of callings announced.
Yeah, March April season.
Yeah, soon.
Very sweet.
Hopefully limited callings. Please limited callings.
Oh, Outsiders, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well, good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks for listening.